Alright guys, today is going to be one of those videos where we talk about something, and today we're talking about how I got my job at BC Racing. This has been a very long requested video. One of my Patreon supporters mentioned that they were looking for a job and they wanted some more advice on how to get a job like my job at BC Racing. You know what? Today's the day. Now is the time. We're going to make this video. I think the easiest way to explain this would be to start with my job history and explain kind of how I got to where I am today. And then based off that, give you guys some tips on how to get into a job like BC Racing or maybe a Comp Cams or Jags. I don't know. Just a job in the aftermarket parts industry, because for somebody like us who modifies cars, this is kind of the end-all be-all job. You get to work with what you work with all the time and what you enjoy and do what you love and travel to events, you know, depending on what you do for the company, things like that. So it really is the dream job for somebody like me, at least. But it wasn't always like that for me. So back in the beginning, my dad started dating this woman. They dated for about 2 years, and then my dad decided that we were going to move up to Deltona, DeBerry area with her, which is about an hour from where we lived then. And it's like between Orlando and Daytona, if you know anything about Florida geography. We moved up there, and it's one of those things where she was super awesome until we moved there, and then as soon as we moved there, it was like, everything's cut off. I've got you trapped now. You're done. I'm going to be an evil woman. And basically, she took my car from me. I had it for 2 months. I just got my driver's license. She's like, you cannot have this car, drive this car until you get a job. Not even drive it to look for a job. They would always give me this 1 week thing. You can have 1 week to look for a job, and then we're taking the car away. And I couldn't drive it other than to look for a job anyway. So going to a new school, I was riding the bus to school, which is super embarrassing. Being a junior in high school, riding the bus to school, going from driving to school at your previous school, knowing all these people, to being the new kid who's at 11th grade riding the bus to school. It doesn't sound like that big of a deal to me now, but I know back then I was like, oh, this sucks. This is so embarrassing. I'm trying to make friends and not look like a loser, and I feel like one, which you're not a loser if you ride the bus to school. I just high school kid things, right? So this may seem irrelevant, but I say this to say everything is kind of relative. What you think is the great job or the best or whatever is going to be all relative to your previous experience. So I know some people who just straight into had a job like BC Racing and they don't appreciate it at all, whereas I kind of went through a lot of crappy jobs, so I appreciate it. Back to what I was saying, it took me about 4 months to find a job, because I would be like, okay, I'm not going to find one in a week, and I wouldn't even try, and then they give me another week, and then I'd look, and what would you call it? Applied for probably 30 places, at least 40 places, and I got maybe, I think 3 or 4 interviews. One was at like AutoZone, they didn't hire me. One was at a restaurant on the lake in DeBerry or the river, they didn't hire me. And I finally got my interview at Steak and Shake, and they hired me on the spot. I was elated. I was so stoked to get this job at Steak and Shake, which I know a lot of people would be like, oh, I would never work at Steak and Shake. I would not do that, yada, yada. I hear people say this all the time. For me, I was like, I have a job. That means I can pay for my insurance, and that means I can pay for my gas, and that means I can drive to school and maybe have enough money to go to the skate park and ride. This was the greatest thing ever, you know? It wasn't the best job, but it was a job. And I was so stoked to get that job, and I worked there a year and a half, and I've done this in every single job that I've been in, and I think this is really important. Instead of just showing up and going, this isn't the job I want, so I'm just going to do the bare minimum to get by. Because you're kind of just setting yourself up for failure there. You're not going to take anything with you from that job. You may not think that working at Steak and Shake would apply to any future job. There's a lot of similar things in any job you do that you can take from each job. And you can take that skill, mold it, and use it in your new jobs, and use it as experience, and use it to put you above the other people that, you know, are trying to get that job. Because it's pretty much every job nowadays, you have competition for it. You can't just like walk into a place and get a job, really, at least not in this area in Florida, from my experience. So when I started working there, basically I was a grill cook, and you would take the patties out, press them, they come in this like tiny little puck, press the top, flip them, and then smash them down. You're supposed to do like 3 motions. Mine would come out like footballs and whatever, and I just wanted to get good enough to get a patty down. Then I could get a patty down, and I'd see, you know, some of the other guys that worked there, and they'd be able to put 5, 6 patties in a row and 50 across the grill. You know, and I was only able to manage 15, 20 at the time. So I wanted to get as good as them, because the better I got at it, the more shifts I would get, the more money I would make, the more I'd be able to do. And by more, I mean anything. Actually have the money to drive to Daytona to go to the skate park. So I hustled, and I tried to become the best grill cook I could, because I didn't want to just work there and get by. I wanted to be doing something and progressing at something, and getting better at something, and not just going there, clocking in some hours and going home and taking my checks. I wanted to learn something and be better at it. And I will tell you, it was still to this day the most difficult job I've ever had. And I know it sounds cheesy, and people talk about working at fast food restaurants as the epitome of high school because they're so simple, but that job was so stressful because as a grill cook, I had to grill the patties. I had to look at the screen and know how many patties for each burger, what cheese went on those patties. Some came with regular buns, which you'd have to toast. You'd have to put these boards on them to press them down and toast those. Some came with premium patties, which you had to butter, then put on the grill. And then while cooking hot dogs with a timer and chicken with a timer, and then if you start running low on bacon, you got to cook a bunch of bacon and put it up to keep warm. And there's just so much going on at one time. And I remember there were some busy shifts where when it's busy, you're supposed to have a bun toaster. Like, that's actually what they called it. And there would be busy shifts where I was supposed to have a bun toaster, and then they'd forget to schedule them, they'd call out or something, and I'm doing 50 patties on the grill at a time, screens just flashing red at me because there's so many orders, and I would just want to quit. I wanted to just walk out. And there was times where I got so far as taking my apron off and I'm doing it, I'm walking out, I'm done with this place. You know, and I remember what my dad told me, which was never quit a job until you've got another job lined up. And I thought about it. It's not worth going back to riding the bus. You know, I mean, at this point I was going to school, getting off school, going to work, working, getting home at 10 o'clock at night, doing homework, going to sleep, waking up, doing it over again. And I can't quit. I need this job. I absolutely have to have this job. So I worked there for about a year and a half, started applying to other places. I applied at a bunch of auto parts stores. And by luck, like, this doesn't normally happen. Like, normally you apply to a place, they get so many online applications that you pretty much just have to go pester them until they, you know, say, okay, I'll give you an interview, because they just get hundreds of these. It's really easy to type in an online application. So I get a call from Advance saying, hey, you know, we want to set up an interview with you and whatever. And I was, oh my God, this is the greatest day of my life. I'm going to get a job at an auto parts store, hopefully. I was so stoked. I got there. I ended up getting there late because I went to the wrong address and it was 3 miles across town. And I finally get there. I do the interview. They definitely didn't hire me on the spot. I had to come back like a second one, and they asked me all these auto parts questions, and I got the job there. Oh my God, yes, finally. Finally, I'm working in auto parts. I'm not a grill cook. I am doing what I love. I love cars, and I'm working with cars, and I'm selling auto parts, and this is going to be great. And what did I do there? The same thing I did at Advance. I didn't want to just be some counter person that just got by. I wanted to be the best that I could. So I started helping the commercial guy, and I started picking up the phone for him because nobody wanted to talk to anybody but Butch. Everyone's like, nope, let me talk to Butch, because they knew he would get them the right part. They didn't want it to get screwed up, and then they've got a customer sitting there for an extra couple hours while we wait to get them the right part. And I slowly gained their confidence by answering the phone when he wasn't available, and he would kind of help me and teach me, okay, this is what we do for this guy, this is what we do for that guy. And then it came time for him to get transferred to another store. They swore up and down, I was 19 years old, you cannot be the commercial guy. We know you know how to do it, but our customers are going to have no faith if you're 19 and this and that. So they hired this guy in with 20 years experience. The guy knew nothing. I called him one time when I wasn't working and asked him for a piston return spring for a Mitsubishi Galant. And I swear, no joke, he told me he had the snap-on tool for it because he had the tool for everything, and that they're a pain to change and all this stuff. So this guy kind of turned everything into a mess, and it got to the point where the customers kind of rallied up. If you guys don't put Taylor in the position, you know, we're leaving. And this is not meant to be any sort of gloating. It just worked out that way. But what I'm saying is I worked really hard to do more than I was required of. I could have just taken the low responsibility route, worked the counter, and just done my job until I found something else. But I was working on auto parts. This is great. So I took the initiative to try to learn commercial and be able to do commercial. And then I gained the customer's trust, and then they wanted me to be in that position because I had done well with them before. You know, because I took that effort and went forth and tried to branch into something new within the company. So long story short, they ended up demoting that guy because the customers were just really upset. They put me in the position. I did that position for about 8 months or a year. It was awesome. Full time, I was making decent money. You know, I still lived at home at the time, so I was able to buy parts for my car and build it and go drifting every weekend, and it was great. It was a really, really awesome experience. Then my stepmom talked me into going back to college, and she's like, you need to go to college, you're too smart to waste this, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, you know what, where else am I gonna go? What else, I'm not gonna work commercial for the rest of my life. I need to do something. So I decided to go back to college, which just isn't for me. I've always done well in school, but I just hate it. So I go to college, I do decent.
I get kicked out right into the second semester. So I had this job that could have supported me to live on my own. Then but I didn't quit that job, but I requested to go down to part-time. Then they ended up giving me 0 hours, and I moved over to O'Reilly's and started working there, part-time still. Then got kicked out and had to re-find a full-time job. It was just this big convoluted mess because my stepmom wanted to kick me out at a really bad time and whatnot. So I immediately found a full-time job being a service writer for this car dealership, which I won't name. Very sketchy. Still to this day, I wonder if it was a money laundering thing. It was this big dealership, but the guy was from a different country. We're not even gonna go that far. And there was a room where he had cameras watching everybody. All the phone lines were recorded. Like every website was recorded. He would lash out on people. And I started realizing, I worked there for a couple days, started realizing everybody was new. Everyone had worked there for a couple of months, and that's a bad sign. Oh, I don't know what to do here. Like, do I stay here? Do I go? And the HR guy knew what I was going through, knew I needed to support myself, and I couldn't afford to lose this job and job instability. And he told me, came in, this job's not going to offer a lot of stability. As you can probably tell, the owner is kind of wishy-washy. You should get out while you can, because I had another job opportunity available, which is with my friend Grafton, working at this awning company. They made big commercial awnings. They did all sorts of other projects. I really don't even know how to explain what it was. I just say construction because it's easier. But we would just do, yeah, anyway. So I told him about that job. He told me to do it. At least there you'll hopefully have some job stability. I know you need it. So I took the plunge and started working there. And as much as I wanted to be in the car industry, you've got to pick and choose your battles. I'd much rather have a job. It was making, I think, the same amount of money. The service writer job, like some crazy, I think it was 9 a.m. What was it, 9 a.m. until 7? No. I don't know. It was really late. It was like 9 to 9 for like 6 days a week, or 9 to 7, 6 days a week. It was miserable, and I had moved into this crappy one-bedroom self-efficiency. That's what they call it. It's got a room. It's kind of like a hotel. Room, kitchen, bathroom all in one unit. And it was in Cracktown. My neighbor was selling prescription drugs. There was always sketchy people showing up, either walking up or driving up, and you could tell they were always on something. And it was a humbling place to be, to say the least. It was still nicer than being at home, in a decent house and having just hatred day in and day out. I'd rather be here in this slum, in this terrible place. I'm happier with this. This is my own place. I don't have to deal with that negativity in my life anymore. So I was okay with it. And I started working this job, and I was working a ton of hours, but I mean, it was rough. I was waking up at 4 in the morning because it was about a 30-minute drive to work. Get there between 4:30 and 5, depending on what time we had to start the day. And we would work until about 6, 7 at night, and then drive back from Tampa, which is where the job site was. And I'd get home around 10 p.m. Hardly even be able to eat food, go straight to sleep, wake up the next morning, do it again. But I was making good enough money to move out of that place and into an apartment. I got an apartment with my first long-term girlfriend. Terrible decision. We hadn't been dating that long. Don't know what I was thinking. That obviously ended poorly. But, it got to this point where I was pretty much just spending all my money on bills and living in this apartment, and I'd go to work and I'd come home and didn't have time to work on my car, didn't have energy to work on my car, and it was a pretty low place, but the bright side of it that I saw was that, I was being active and I was learning. I learned a lot about how to work construction, how to do things, how to drill into concrete, how to weld. I learned briefly how to weld, how to cut and fit and fab and install stuff. I learned so much working at that job. These are invaluable skills that I can take somewhere else, and these are a lot of hours, but if I can manage to save some money, this will be worth it in the end. I feel like this is already pretty long of a video, so I'm sorry, but I need to kind of explain this to you guys for you to understand fully. So I worked that job for probably 1.5 years, 2 years, and like I said, it was rough. We never knew when we were working and what we were doing. Work 5 a.m. to 9 p.m., get back, and that's when we were told, all right, be in at 4 tomorrow. What are we doing? Oh, I don't know, working. You never knew what we were doing. It could be an 8-10 hour day, or it could be an 18-hour day, or I've done a 24-hour day. It was rough, the uncertainty, and the straw that broke the camel's back was I was looking for another job, and I was going by the motto, do not quit your job until you have another one lined up. And I looked, and to try to go get an interview while working 5 to 6 days a week, 14 to 18 hours a day,
It's obviously not easy. So I couldn't do it, you know. I'd miss interviews and all this stuff because I'd be working. You know, I think I went to like 1 or 2 on my lunch break, and just like, it wasn't even a good option for me to take said job. So at one point in time, I go to work, I get done early. I think it's like 2 o'clock, and my boss is like, all right, you can have the rest of the day off because you need to leave at 2 in the morning to go to Alabama. You're gonna be there for a week. And at this point, he hadn't paid me for like 2 weeks because, you know, he was kind of living paycheck to paycheck. He needed to get paid by the job before he could pay us. And it was a very small company, and it was really stressful. So I went home that day, and I had my coworker who didn't have a license. He was gonna stay with me to go back the next morning. And I was like, man, Nick, dude, I can't do this anymore, man. I'm never gonna find another job unless I quit this job. Oh, hold on, rewind. We'll pause that part of this for a moment. I forgot a crucial part coming into this. So, my friend Chelsea, don't know if you guys may know him from FD. If you watch Formula Drift, he drives a Mustang now. He drives the E46. You know, we had become friends. I'd known him for a few years, and me, him, and Grafton all ended up going out riding because I had moved in with Grafton at this point and broken up with the girl that was a terrible relationship that I should have never been in the first place. And me and Grafton we ride BMX, and we're riding around, and Chelsea asked me, hey, do you like your job? And I'm like, nah, dude, I hate my job. Okay, and he didn't really say much more. And then our other Andrew friend, Andrew Engelman, was like, Chelsea, yo, give me that job, And Andrew didn't need the job, let me just say that. I'm telling you, somebody always mows their lawn or something when I try to make these videos where I'm just talking, without fail. I hope that's not too loud. If it is, I'm sorry. So anyway, I'm like, yeah, what job? And Chelsea's like, oh, you know, we need another person at BC. He knew Andrew was moving. He's like, you're not really gonna work with a long-term person. Dude, please, whatever you can do, I would love that job. Let me know what I need to do. He's like, all right, send me your resume. I'll try to get you an interview. So I send him my resume, wait, don't hear back, hit him up again. He's like, yeah, I'm working on it, you know, whatever. And I sent it to him again, I think, and then he's like, all right, I sent it to my manager. I'll set you up an interview sometime next week. And this is when I was supposed to leave at 2 a.m. I'm gonna be out of town next week. I can't do an interview next week. I'm gonna be gone all week. And he's like, all right, man, like, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. They're trying to hire somebody soon, so, you know, maybe if they're still looking. Man, if I miss up the opportunity to get this job at BC Racing, a company I never thought I'd be lucky enough to work for, that I've known about since I got into this, over this, what am I gonna do, you know? This would suck. So I thought long and hard about it. You know what, I'm never gonna find another job until I quit this job. And I took that plunge. I know it was the right decision now, but at the time, oh man, was this a good idea? So take the plunge, right? I quit the job. All right, I can do this interview now. And ironically enough, Andrew drove Nick to work. Andrew used to work at the same place I did. He had quit. I'm living with Andrew. Nick's staying with us, who still works there to this day. Andrew gives Nick a ride to work. My boss freaks out that he knows that I'm not coming in and quitting, basically. He shows up to my house, tries to wake me up. I was so tired, I just slept through it all. It's pretty hilarious at the end of the day. So anyway, I hit up Chelsea. All right, dude, I can get this interview. Like, let me know. And then it's like, yeah, I'll let you know. And I don't hear from him. And I'm like, Chelsea, bro, like, come on, man. I didn't want to tell him I quit my job for this interview, but it's kind of what happened. So I freak out and I decide, all right, you know what? I'm gonna try to get another job. So I find this shop that's hiring. They pay like 14 to 18 an hour flat rate. They do all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, I can do this. I've done engine swaps. I've rebuilt engines. But these have all been in S chassis. So I get the job there, and it was a terrible nightmare. I don't think I would ever suggest that to anybody. The shop foreman on one of my first days was telling me how this transmission had blown up, and he needed me to pull the transmission in the morning out of this Dodge Caravan. And I'm looking at the pan gasket, and there's RTV just oozing like out of it everywhere. Whoever applied the RTV applied a fat bead, stuck it up there. All that went inside the transmission, presumably got into all of the inner workings, toasted the trans. So I'm like, oh man, whatever idiot rebuilt this transmission, they're the ones who screwed this up. You can see all the RTV hanging out the sides. That means they got all in there, thinking I was being smart. And he'd be like, wow, you know what you're talking about. Turns out he's the one who rebuilt the transmission. I found that out from another employee there. So ever since then, he hated me, would give me a crap job, he was just on me all the time. He was like a total jerk. And I had to leave there on lunch, and we had a 30-minute lunch, and I'm like, all right, I gotta take an hour lunch. I've gotta drop my girlfriend's debit card off or something. I don't remember what I told them, to go do my interview at BC Racing, which took longer than that because it was like 30 minutes away. I had just enough time to get there and back. I go do the interview. I come back, and the dude's like, don't come in tomorrow. Or no, he said leave for the day. This is a Friday. He's like, leave for the day. Okay. So I come back in the next day on a Saturday. He's not there. We had to work Saturday, half day. And all the other guys are like, I thought you were fired. What do you mean you thought I was fired? He fired you yesterday. He said you weren't coming back. He just told me to go home for the day. So I ended up working there another 2 weeks after this guy had fired me. I forgot all about this, man. He fired me. I just came back because I didn't know that he fired me because he didn't word it right, and just kept working for like 2 weeks. And then finally, I think a week or two after that, I still hadn't heard from BC. And it turned out the reason I hadn't heard from BC was because one of my old coworkers, who could be kind of an asshole. When I say kind of, I mean a lot of one. He's been nice to me since then, but he was a total jerk to me back then in a lot of ways that I won't go into because we don't have time. But he had told my boss and a coworker that I was just this terrible employee and all this and that. So they were weary to hire me. So the reason I wasn't hearing back was because they had told me that I told them that I was a terrible employee because I had quit to get the interview there. They didn't go into that much detail, but you get the idea. Basically, I was being trash talked by my previous employer's employee, and that almost kept me from getting the job at BC. I'm working when I'm fired from this other job. It was really, really bad time. I was stressing out a little bit. I had enough money to last me a month or two, but not a ton. I lost money working at that job because the guy wouldn't give me any hours, and I spent more money in gas and tolls going there and back than I would make because I'd do maybe an hour's worth of work a day. So I finally just like, I'm not even making money, I'm out of here. Took my toolboxes, Crosby took me there to pick them up. We actually ended up on the news. I wonder if I can find that clip and put it in here. We were driving by and there was something about people getting tickets for stopping on the railroad tracks, and they randomly just picked us to interview. I'm going to try to find that and insert it. Hopefully you guys see that because that was funny. On the way to get my toolboxes, we get my toolboxes. Sorry, this is like slightly out of order, but I'm remembering this as I go. I don't rehearse these things. So anyway, I have like a week off work, and it was a pretty cool week because Crosby had just quit his job. He had just gotten out of a bad relationship. I had gotten out of a bad relationship. We just hung out. We would go up to 7-Eleven and ended up hanging out with the 7-Eleven employees, like eating 7-Eleven pizza at 3 in the morning. And it was the first time since I was like 15 that I didn't have a job. And I could just go to 7-Eleven at 3 in the morning. Like one of those things where the first time I had quit, before I got the job at the shop, I was stressing out hardcore. Oh my God, I gotta get a job, I gotta get a job, I gotta get a job. And this time I'm like, you know what? I found that job one day after I quit the last job. I'll be able to find another one. I'm going to enjoy this period of not having a job because it's probably gonna be the last time that I ever just don't have a job. So we'll let it ride, right? So I am persistent as hell with BC. I call almost every day. I go back there. Hey, just wanted to check in, see what's up. And finally, they agree to give me a second interview. They give me a second interview, and we're outside talking. And they're like, "Are you okay with building a desk?" Yeah. And I'm like, "Okay, well, you'll have to come build your desk tomorrow then." Okay, I don't want to ask, but I'm like, I think that means I got the job. I'm still freaking out. Like, I hope that means it, but I don't want to assume. Whatever. And that's how I got my job at BC. It was a friend of mine happened to work there, told me that they were hiring. He was able to pass my resume through and get me in the door. And I think that is the most important part. It's going to be networking. When you think about it, this is a niche industry and there's a lot of people in it, but there's not a lot of people working in it. If this dude works at Haltech and his friend's looking for a job, he's going to try to get his friend the job because everyone wants to work at Haltech, everyone wants to work at BC, everyone wants to work at Mishimoto. There's a lot of people and they don't necessarily normally just hire somebody off the street. So networking is crucial. If you have the opportunity to meet somebody who works at this industry and meet with the boss and hang out with them, meet them, talk to them. Maybe if they're not looking for somebody, they may know that this shop down the street is looking for somebody, or this company is looking for somebody. And as lame as that is of an answer, that's really the way to do it. And the key there too is don't go into it like, I'm going to be friends with this guy because I know he works at BC and I want a job at BC. 100% the wrong way to do it. Won't work. It's one of those things where it's going to come in time. I met Chelsea just because I was drifting and I hung out with him and we had mutual friends and we all ended up hanging out together. And I knew the product because I'd been working on cars with coilovers. I'd messed with those coilovers. I'd help friends install them. And I knew the product and I knew how it worked, and I knew what people were looking for and all of this stuff before I ever even realized that getting a job at BC was like a possibility. So a lot of people ask, is there a school you can go to? And no, there's really not a school you can go to. Sure, you could get a degree in business that might help you become a manager of one of these places. And sure, something like learning how to TIG weld and being a welder and being able to fabricate parts for an aftermarket company would obviously work as well. But again, these jobs are highly desirable, and because of just what they are, as I said in the beginning, for me, I was stoked at the opportunity to work at BC Racing. I love working there. I love the people I've met. And once you get into the industry, if you can take a step in, do it, because you will meet so many people. I've met so many people from different companies, going to these events, talking to them on the phone, and meeting those people is more networking and more connections to potentially do something further down the road should this end. I don't think it will, but the more people you meet, the more doors open up to possibilities in the future to work with someone, for someone, etc. Like we said in the beginning, take your skill set, take something from every job, master it, and you will be able to take that into any job. I learned time management from Steak and Shake, which I use to help determine, okay, I'm going to work on a car for this many hours to do some R&D, and then I'm going to go back in the office for this period of time where it's some highest call volume and I can get my emails caught up. Then I'm going to go back out there. Working at Advanced, I learned how to talk to people and how to maintain relationships with customers and kind of like learn their strong suits, learn their weak suits, help them work on those, know what they like, know what they don't like, understand their sense of humor, and be able to joke back with them instead of getting offended by them or offending them. I learned a lot of those people skills there. And then my construction job, well, that really just taught me how to appreciate this job. I feel like if you haven't gone through some crappy jobs before you get to one like this, you might not see it the way you should and appreciate it the way you should. But for me, I've had some jobs that really sucked. So this job is way up there. I still every day wake up thankful to be going to work for such a great company, work with such great people, have a boss that I consider my friend, have the owner I consider my friend. I went on a road trip with him to Vegas. We towed his car there, and I had a blast, just as much fun as I would have with any of my other friends on a road trip. And I value that a ton, and that's why I'm still there. I've been working there for about 4 years now, and I'm not just going to jump ship. And be careful to not necessarily do that. Don't just jump ship whenever you can, because the grass isn't always greener on the other side, and you kind of make yourself look bad when you do that. So, Cliff Notes. I'm sure you guys are like, Taylor, you still didn't answer the question. Somebody's calling me. John's calling me. I'll call him back when I finish this, because I'm almost done. I'm almost done, guys. I'm almost done talking. You guys are probably like, Taylor, you didn't answer the dang question. The question was, how did you get your job? And what, you just know people? Yeah, that's really a lot to do with it. Knowing people and learning what you can about the product and the industry. And the more you're within the industry doing things, the more opportunities you will have to find the job, because the more people you're going to meet. If you're just this guy that goes drifting to the track and keeps to himself, you're probably never going to meet this person and this person and that person and then find out that they're hiring and be able to get your resume in and get the job, or learn enough to know what you would do there and things like that. So just key point here, key points. Networking. Networking is number one. Number two, experience. Get as much experience as you can. If you have to start at some company that you don't think's that cool, like Advance, that Advance experience helped me in getting my job because I had prior automotive auto parts experience. It may not be aftermarket industry, but I had experience in the auto parts. Wow, it sounds stupid. I had experience in the auto parts. But seriously though, like that helped a ton, and I remember them, being like, "Oh, that's cool that you already have, automotive sales experience," because I was going into sales originally. I ended up in tech. Regardless of that, do what you can to work for that goal, and don't think that you're just going to step right into working for one of these aftermarket companies. You may not find the opportunity to do so, but you're going to learn a lot along the way. Also, remember to take everything you can from every job you have and always make upward moves. Someone told me this, my friend John Wren, never make a lateral move. Lateral moves are bad. I made a lateral move once and it was a terrible call. If you're gonna make a move to another job, always move up. Make sure that you are climbing the ladder. You're not just going across the roof. So I hope that helps some of you guys. I know that it's kind of still like a big question mark left. Oh, male guy, hold on. I got a shirt from Careless. Shout out to those guys, they're awesome. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I can think of right now. But teach yourself these things. I taught myself about coilovers by working on them, and I was able to take that experience and say, hey, I know about your product. And when they asked me the questions, I had some answers. You know, I didn't know anywhere near as much as I do now, but I had them. And while I've been here, I've learned a lot about suspension. I've spent my own time reading engineering books and understanding the physics behind it and the theories and how all this stuff works, how to calculate, you know, a spring rate from a Hertz ratio that you're shooting for and what Hertz ratio you would shoot for, and frequency, Hertz frequency, and things like that. And those have made me more of an asset to the company because I now have skills that maybe others don't have because nobody's taken the time to learn it. Not nobody. Other people haven't taken the time to learn it. And I think that that's really important to do. And you're not only bettering what you can do for the company, but you're bettering yourself. So now I get to do even cooler things. I get to help people with race cars spec out their suspension and figure out what spring rates they want to run, what shock links we can run, what kind of valving. You know, I get to do all sorts of cool stuff like that, interact with these, you know, drivers of all different motorsports. And it's because I decided to teach myself how to do it and ask questions to other people who knew. And it's all about being the best you can be at whatever you're doing, regardless of what it is, and taking that with you. So I know this is long-winded. I know there was no real resolution. This is all I've got for you. This is why I haven't really answered this question yet, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Back to our regularly scheduled programming soon, even though this is kind of becoming a part of it. It seems there's always something to talk about. Also, do not forget this weekend, 11, 17, 17, Black Friday event at OSW. Spectators can camp. So that means you can come, hang out, camp, bonfire, party with us. Before it was drivers only. Now spectators can camp. So it's kind of like Grid Life. I forget who said it, but they're like, it's like Grid Life but trashier. It's going to be a good time. 3-day event. I'm going to be taking the Miata. Most likely it will blow up, so also the Vet at some point. I'll have to come back and get it. Camping, my goal is to be there all 3 days. So if you guys are in the Central Florida area, you should come out to that. It's going to be a killer event. It definitely was last year. So I hope to see you there. With that, thank you guys for watching. Thanks for subscribing. See you next time. Goodbye. Less awkward wave this time. See that?